Hey everyone, I'm Jay.
And I'm Sophia, and welcome to Betwixt.
Today we're going to be talking about money. That green paper well, I guess in America it's green and different colors all around the world.
Yeah.
I guess the thing that people claim is the root of all evil, so to speak. But yeah, we're here to talk about money and witchcraft and how the two relate or shouldn't relate according to some people. But really, we're kind of just digging into the idea of making witchcraft your livelihood, making money from your craft, and um, just utilizing your craft for as your own livelihood. Um, Sophia, do you kind of want to start off the kind of like your thoughts on whether you agree that it's okay to make money from witchcraft?
Well, I'd be a hypocrite if I said that I thought it was wrong because I just recently ended up having to do some tarot for money because I was pretty much flat broke. And of course, it was like family who had paid me for it. So like that helped, right? Like they were trying to help me out by doing it. But I don't know. I think like it's easy to judge other people's situations based on your own moral standards and like what you've experienced in your life. But like I don't see how you could really go to somebody who's doing tarot for a living or like making money from magic and say, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong. You know, you shouldn't be selling it." Because like there's only I don't know, money fucking sucks, you know what I mean? And sometimes you get to a point where there's not a lot you're super great at in life, and maybe you put like 10 plus years into your craft, right? Now, any other trade in the fucking world, like artist, you could sell a painting, even though painting is a really bad example because God knows you do not make money worth your time from paintings unless you're rich or sorry, famous. And like,
True.
yeah, but like any other skill, it's not really a problem if you made money from 10 years worth of work, right? And there's like this weird kind of bias in the witchcraft community that nobody should really do stuff for money sometimes. Not to say that everybody thinks that, but a lot of people kind of have that attitude. It's like there's only certain forms of making money from witchcraft that are socially acceptable. Like the first that comes to mind is books and music. Nobody's going to tell you that selling a book is a bad thing because books help everybody and everybody should be able to buy them, and it's been a part of the community since it pretty much started books, right? Same thing with music. Like you need people to play at your festivals and like that stuff draws people together. But like where the judgment kind of comes in is in like money magic. There's a lot of people who are very opinionated about that, and then doing small acts of money for or like magic for money, right? Like say doing like tarot readings or palmistry or astrology, you know? But like I don't know. I think what do you have to chip in? I've said a fair bit there.
Yeah, I think I would say that as just like a general blanket opinion on whether I believe it is okay to make money from your craft, I do believe it is okay to make money from your craft. I 100% believe it because it is a craft, it is a profession, it is a vocation. So, I do believe that you should be allowed to have a livelihood from that. Just as with any vocation or trade, however you want to look at it, I view witchcraft as much as, some people can view it as a religion or a spiritual journey or something like that, but I also view it as like a job in a way, especially when you present yourself as a witch to either friends, family, or even just the general public. If people are receptive to the fact that you're a witch, like if they don't do that immediate reaction of like, oh, ew, that's gross, that's weird, that's evil. If you don't get that immediate reaction, generally they become very receptive and people start to ask you questions like, oh,
Hmm.
can you read my cards? Can you um you know, make me a spell, or my boss is an ass. What can we do about that?
Hmm.
And so they start to come to you asking for things, which is no different than being an artist and someone coming up to you and say, "Hey, you draw really well. Can you draw this for me?" Or being a graphic designer and, "Hey, can I commission you?" It's essentially
Yeah.
someone commissioning you to do something. So I believe that it is totally fine to accept money for your services because you are performing a service.
Hmm.
Um, I think some of the stigma surrounding accepting money for magic comes from there are people out there who are not. I hate using the term real witch or not legit, but there are just some people who are obviously not legitimate, I guess, if you want to put it that way. The thing that comes to mind is like when you like late night television. I don't know if anyone remembers like I don't know if you saw like commercials for like Miss Cleo. She did like tarot
I
readings or
don't know
something
if
like
Cleo was
that.
fake. I
I
don't
don't
have
know that,
personal
but
experience about that.
yeah, I don't know if she was fake, but it's that over commercialized kind of thing. You know what I mean? Um, so it's this idea of you see these kind of I don't know, I guess maybe charlatan types that are or people who give like walk around giving like unsolicited psychic advice and be like, "Oh,
Hmm.
I see things." So there can be a lot of smoke and mirrors
Yeah,
um in the
but like
field.
sometimes they straight up open like a fucking business. Like there's a place right next to me that is like 16 kinds of cultural appropriation. And it's like palm readings and chakra alignments and all of these things from like differing like backgrounds and stuff and like Reiki, and it's like you can tell this person's just literally trying to do anything they can to get every bit of business they can. And there's like this is something we're going to talk about in a different episode, but I think it ties into this. You have to kind of be aware of when like people are taking you for a ride with it too, right? Because like I don't know, if I were to like touch on myself, I don't actually like to accept money for craft working stuff. I will usually do it purely pro bono because I hate the idea of taking money into my craft. That said, I do need to eat and pay bills. So if I'm super broke, I sometimes will, do some tarot readings for some money for people, and like I view it as when it's a necessity for me, it's okay. But when I'm in plenty and I'm doing well, then I very much like to let my cup overflow and share with others, right? Um, and I think that my rules are just for me. They're not necessarily what everybody else should go by, but I think it's important to have your own kind of personal code of morals of what you will and what you won't do, what you will and won't say. Because, like, there's also a
Mm,
lot of etiquette around doing a tarot reading for someone. Like, if you're doing a reading for somebody and fertility comes up 3 times, you can mention that to them, but you can't tell her, hey, I think you're fucking pregnant, Like,
right, exactly.
and a lot of people will really, like, cross that line and say things like, I see that your mother's gonna die, and say really like provocative things to try and like
Yes.
make you feel wowed or like upset and get that emotional response, right? Because then they've got you. Whereas
Make you
like,
yeah, and also make you feel like you got your money's worth, like you
mhm.
got the show that you were looking for.
But whereas I find when you talk to like somebody who's been doing it genuinely, you get advice. You don't get
Yes.
this is what's going to happen. Like when I did a tarot reading for my family members, both of them I did a 5 card spread with my system, it's 5 cards that you draw and it does a cross and it's a central issue. So like the card in the middle is something that the whole reading focuses on. So for example, success. right? Because that's a card in the Thoth deck, and everything around it are like factors involved. So like when you get the Tower card as an orbital card, you point out to the person, hey, here's things to look out for, because if you don't, this will cause ruin here. And like with it paired to a rune, like I do, because I do a rune for each card, it tells you like what specifically to look out for, and I find it's really helpful, and you can get a lot of clarity without telling someone like, hey, you're pregnant. I can say, hey, I see
Mm-hmm.
fertility in here twice. Now might be a good time to look towards having children. Stuff like that is a lot more like responsible and what you'll actually get from somebody who's trying to do their best to give you an authentic reading and not try and elicit an emotional response. Because like I did a reading the other day and they had the Nine of Swords and the fucking Tower, and I'm like, great, I have to spin some of the hardest fucking cards in the deck to make it seem like your world isn't fucking ending right now, because that certainly isn't what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's work, and you spend like hours ending up like writing up for people what their reading was, because it's like really extremely difficult to do a live call reading, right? And like then you barely make money for the amount of time that you put in. It sucks. It does.
um, yeah, I mean, if you're, I guess to really put it into perspective, there's a lot of different, um, I guess, going rates in the witchcraft community that I've
Mhm.
seen. Let's just use readings as an example because I feel like that's probably the most common thing that people pay for is for readings. So usually, like for example, like at a pagan pride event. So for our Philly pagan pride events, most of our vendors, if they're doing readings, it's between $10 to $20. twenty
Yeah.
dollars is high for
Yeah.
like a, I guess if you want to call it like a festival, right? Because it's kind of like a little festival,
Mhm.
um, or like a fair, however you want to call it. But I feel like 10, because usually your readings are not that long. It's maybe 10 to 15 minutes,
Mhm.
maybe 20 minutes, because it's a very small scale kind of thing. So charging between $10 and $20 is very fair for something like
Mhm.
that, especially for like a 15-minute reading, 20-minute reading. Now, when I, and even now in, if someone were to ask, I guess maybe like for a 30 to 40-minute reading, maybe well into an hour, I still can't see anyone charging
More
more
than 20
than
bucks.
maybe more than 30 for like a
Yeah.
full hour, you know? Because you figured that's $30 an hour. Like you just made $30 an hour.
Mhm.
Um, when I was in Salem, I think it was a 30-minute reading was $65 at most
Oh yeah.
shops.
That was the same out here, at a place that
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention, and then they bumped their prices up as well. And like that's just a side feature of what they do there. It's not like I go in for tarot readings, because I actually fucking loathe anybody else doing divination for me, and I absolutely refuse it.
Unless it's, well, would you ask like a friend or something like that? Like if they,
I'm at the point where if I want divination, I'll do it myself. I've
uh,
gotten quite good at it. It was the thing that I got back into the occult with back when I was like 20. So I was doing divination and tarot again before I even got into DKMU. So it's something I'm pretty practiced at. And when you do your own hybrid system, like when I'm doing my personal readings, I'll use three separate systems and combine them and work them together, right? I'll
mhm,
use like the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, because I love the Kabbalistic associations and how fucking straightforward the deck is. It doesn't fuck around, and it will have every color of the rainbow, including the good and the bad. Then the Elder Futhark rune set, because they always give illumination on what card being drawn represents what and how to like work with it. It like gives you an angle to approach it, right? And then I draw a few cloud cards, like usually one to three, just as like influencing factors, because it's a very different system too, that I'm still working on. And the cloud cards after a reading for me end up on my altar. So
mhm.
like I don't want anybody else to do divination for me, because I don't like how much they try, like when I do divination, it's like suggestions and things to pay attention for and factors going on. It gives me a little bit of insight, right? When other people do divination, it's like, here's some shit that's going to happen to you. And it's like,
Right.
I don't want that, because then they're literally doing, because in my personal opinion, doing divination like that is a way to make that future happen. And it takes agency out of my hands personally to have
Mm-hmm.
somebody telling me what my future is, because then I have that idea in my head already. And then you're subconsciously working with it. And very often when I do divination for what's going to happen in the future, it happens. But I'm not necessarily sure it's because it was going to happen that way beforehand, or because
Right.
the reading caused it to happen. So I generally will never, ever, ever fucking ask for the future or let anybody do my tarot, you know?
Yeah. I feel that I do allow other people to read me, but that's only if they ask to read me. I don't really approach
Mm.
other practitioners to read me. Um, and I think because it's really funny, right? So as someone who is pretty practiced with cartomancy, um, I it's really funny. I can't imagine, like, I look at like these psychic shops or even actual occult shops where they're like, oh, we offer readings, and I'm like, I would never in a million years pay someone to read my cards.
Same.
Only because I can do it myself. Um, but what I'm realizing is like that sign isn't posted for a fellow practitioner. It's not marketing to
Yes.
someone who can also read. It's marketed to people, I guess, if you want to call it for better, like lay people, however you want to put it. For people who aren't into the craft, they don't practice it, or whatever the case is, or maybe just someone who just isn't really that good with divination and cartomancy. It's intended for those people.
Hmm.
I feel like there's no rules on what to charge for things. But I do think that a lot of the prices, especially when it comes to divination services, I do think that the higher the price, the larger the witch's ego.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the slippery slope in my mind when it comes to um, money and witchcraft
but at the
is
same
the
time,
ego inflation.
yeah, but at the same time, there's another part to it too. Like, say you make a lot of your income from doing tarot readings, right?
Mhm.
And God knows you're not going to be like, yeah, sure, $30 an hour sounds good. But when you do that once a week, it's not so much, right?
Mhm.
So I understand a lot of people who are like in financial need and it being more important for them. Like maybe they're older and they can't necessarily work a physical job, you know? That can be a real important supplement for buying that person groceries and keeping somebody connected in the community sometimes, right? And like, I think that if I could say anything, it's just that I would hope that we would all have good faith with each other. You know, like I see
Right.
like the $120 readings at certain places and like energy
Yeah.
alignments where they're charging you at the wazoo. And it's like, I know that place is designed to just prey on people, but I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of genuine practitioners out there who are older and like they've done that all their life and maybe they don't have a good resume, maybe no place will hire them and they're living on social assistance, and that's literally buying them medicine or something. Like there's acceptance, there's like exceptions and reasons as to why that can be that way sometimes, you know.
Mhm. Now, one thing that you mentioned earlier, you were saying that you don't really like to charge for
Yep.
witch services. Now, but what about if being a witch was your job?
It makes me worse at it, if I'm being blatantly honest with you.
Mm.
If I'm charging when I'm dirt poor, for some reason it doesn't make my work any less good. But if I'm charging people for it when I don't need it, for some reason my success rates go down, and I'm dead serious. Like my readings will be worse. And it's like I feel like it's a bit of a personal philosophy of mine that I notice because I play competitive shooters a lot. When pressure is on with me, because like we were playing to get to max rank in Destiny last night, and we did it for Ava, so we were playing like the best people that were out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once we got there and the pressure was gone, I was phenomenal, and we won like 11 matches in a row after we had finished that, or not quite 11, but like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And once the pressure was off, I could just do it. But it's like the whole thing of if I'm charging money when I'm broke, I know I need it. And whether or not they get a good reading, I'm not too worried about it because I need that fucking money, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if I don't need it, then it's what comes down to it is my reputation is on the line, right? And I don't like to
Right.
do that. And I don't know, maybe it is just like a little bit of effect of how my magic works, that if I'm charging for it when I don't need it, I can't do it as well. So I tend to just offer my services and let stuff tend to work out elsewhere unless it isn't, and then I do it, right?
So would you say that you don't I don't know how to phrase it. Like you wouldn't want to be a full-time witch. Like you wouldn't want that
I
to be
would
your livelihood
I
and
would
main
love
source of
it,
income?
but I would like to do it from writing. And I know, like, again, that's that
Ah,
socially
okay.
accepted model, but like I don't like doing the little hustle game. You know, I do
Mm-hmm.
not like the idea of doing like charge by spell basis. And then also with that, I hate fucking with other people's lives. Like it's one thing if a friend is having trouble and I offer service to help with spells, which I have done a great deal of times for people, and I'll never bring it up or say what I did or like talk about it on Facebook because that's like more eco inflation, right? But it's like an act of helping people in the world without asking for reciprocation can sometimes be the greatest thing we can contribute, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
like to be able to give back to the world in ways that are more than just going to lift me up financially. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I'd rather live a life being dirt poor where I helped a lot of fucking people in need and struggled a lot myself than be the person who charged everybody a whole bunch of money, right? And it's not to say
Mm-hmm.
that other people shouldn't charge money, but that's me. I'm okay with struggling because I'm used to it, you know?
Mm-hmm. See, like I have maybe somewhat of a different perspective on it. Like I don't I don't want to get rich from witchcraft. That's not I don't want to get rich from anything, honestly. I just want to be able to live a really comfortable life and not have to struggle and not have to worry about the next bill or the next thing. Really, where my huge desire comes from is this idea of I want my livelihood to be something that is very true to my heart.
Mm. I agree.
And I know people say, follow your dream, do your passion, and like, yes, writing is a passion, or um, doing this podcast is a passion, or uh, I have a lot of passions and interests, but the one thing that really wraps it all together is witchcraft and being a part of the community, but also having the community sustain me as well, so that way I can be there for the community. It's like that idea of like giving back,
Hmm.
you know?
I get it
Um,
totally.
yeah, so I definitely, actually, it's really funny. Most of my desire or inspiration really comes from this one guy I knew in college. I went to a Catholic university, so we had to take like two religion classes, but it was very common to see priests and nuns and all around the campus. Some of them were our professors, and also a lot of people that went to that college were very, very devout Catholics. And one of the people there that I became pretty damn good friends with, um, he he wanted to be a priest, and so he wanted to go into the priesthood. And I just, at that time, I couldn't fathom why on earth someone would want to, I guess, devote their life to faith or religion. I couldn't I couldn't grasp it in my mind at the time. And what's interesting, as time went on, we graduated college. I would follow him on Instagram, and he was doing like he was like a youth or like a youth minister or
A
something like
youth
that with
worker?
this one.
Oh, I
Yeah,
know what you
something
mean. I
like
know what you
that.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah, he did work with a church and this and that, and he did a bunch of these things until he got into the seminary. And I think he's done whatever whatever their course of study is to become a priest. But I realized the more I looked at his Instagram posts and the more I saw what he was doing, and I was like, I understand. Like it's the thing that makes him feel complete. It's the thing that makes him feel like this is his calling, you know, like they say, oh, you know, you hear the calling, and I felt that for myself through witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
As weird as that sounds, that I'm finding all this inspiration from this very young Catholic priest, but it was really inspiring to watch him fall. He's like, I'm going to become a priest, and he did it. You know, like from the day that I first met him, he was like, I'm going to do this, up until now, and he did it, and he's dedicated his life to this religion, to this faith that really just brings him such joy. And that's how I feel about witchcraft. Um, I want to I want to go all in with it, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to create things that give back to the community. I want my own shop, but also I want that shop to be a community space. I
Yeah.
want that shop to host, you know, events and have, you know, local covens come in and utilize that space. And I also, you know, wouldn't be opposed to, like, I don't know, like homeless youth that wander through and they're like, I have nowhere to stay. Stay in my shop. You know what I mean? Like, it's just stuff like that. I just want to protect and provide and give back to
Mm-hmm.
the community. And I just have this strong desire to make it financially financially profitable to do that,
Yeah.
to inject that money back into the community, back into the pot, so to speak.
And it's hard because, like, as far as communities go, we're not a rich one. You know, a lot of witches aren't
No.
necessarily people who come from wealth. A lot of us can come from pretty desperate backgrounds at different times. And a lot of people I know who do witchcraft also have trauma, a great deal of them, actually.
Hmm.
So, like, I think we're a community of people who are very vulnerable and who have been through very harsh things and also kind of struggle with life a little bit sometimes, especially when you're like at odds with society and everything it is, and like the values it holds, that is like completely like antithetical to what you believe in when you do
Hmm.
witchcraft, because it's about like community and coming together and oneness and sharing and knowledge and like understanding we're one fucking human race and we can do marvelous things together, right? And like to have a society that demands that we be pitted against each other all the time naturally weakens us, right? And so
Hmm.
I think I wish I would not be stuck in the 9 to 5 life all the time, but if I have to bear it for a while longer, I will, you know? But to me, you were talking about what you'd like out of it most. I'd like to be a performer. I love poetry. I've taken to it very hard. I've got almost, I've got enough to actually finish a book if I were to publish everything I have right now, but I don't like enough of my material, and some of it's too personal to actually publish. So I'd like to do that and maybe one day learn to sing again, because I used to be able to sing prior to my voice surgery, and I'd like to be able to perform in those spaces and bring people together and like bring light and warmth and heart, you know, and tears to people's eyes, make people feel things and make them want to do stuff. Like, what inspired me to do poetry was another trans woman at a poetry reading, and like to be able to pass that spark is such a magnificent power, and I feel like that's my calling, and I really want to be able to do it with my life. So yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting. We both kind of talk about that feeling of that calling.
Yeah, I got a little teary-eyed saying that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why we all gravitated toward each other to do this podcast. I feel like we were all kind of put in each other's paths
Mhm.
for a reason because Scott, he or they couldn't be here with us right now to do this recording. But from the moment I met Scott, they always wanted to have a shop.
Mhm.
What was it? Witchwise Occult Apothecary something something. It was like some long name. I can't remember. It was
Yeah.
Witchwise. It's that
I
that
l-
that brand that Scott has set out for himself. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, that's just always been from day one. So that idea of giving back to the community, and it's not so much the idea of like I'm cool because I have a witch store and I sell witch
Mhm.
things and blah 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 blah. It's not about that because man, if I had my own shop, I wouldn't sell like it pisses me off when I just see, and this is where like witchcraft for money really gets on my nerves is when you walk into a shop and you see the same products that you've seen in all the other witch shops that you've been to.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. It's terrible and it drives me absolutely insane. And I was encountering that in Salem a lot, of all places. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the same stuff that I saw in that shop, and the same tarot decks, the same crystals, the same books.
Can I give you a take that I'm sure is going to be incredibly unpopular that I've been sitting on for a while now?
Yeah,
I am not a fan of Salem and all of the excitement around it. Like, I really don't like to say that too often because I don't want to be someone who, like, puts a damper on other people's fires, but it's like literally for the reason you just listed. It's like commercialized witchcraft. And like
right.
Salem's magical because witch trials happen there and it's known through pop culture. And yes, there is a strong associative energy because of that. But I don't like the idea of going to a place that's popularized because a bunch of women were wrongly accused of like the craft and murdered there. And like then it gets sold and capitalized on. Like it feels really jarring to me, you know? So I
Yeah,
try to stay away from it and not put too much negative energy out there about it, but it really rubs me the wrong way. If I were to go to Salem, I'd be sad the whole fucking time. I would not be able to spend a penny on all of that witchcraft stuff because it seems like it's almost an affront to what happened to those women, you know?
yeah. I agree, and I did have this sense of kind of like wariness and like sadness a lot. The energy in that land is incredible. It's incredibly powerful spot, and you can feel it. Um, the town itself is very visually appealing. It's a cute little town, but we did do some historical things too, and actually, of all the women that like no one was actually a practitioner of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials. No one actually was. They were just all wrongly accused of it, which is absolutely fucking terrible. That these innocent people were just accused of witchcraft because people said so, and then they died.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing. But I was under the impression that a batch of like super 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 witchy like real witchcraft shops were all in Salem, and a lot of what I found was just the same commercialized stuff recycled from shop to shop to shop. Not all of the shops, but a good chunk of them. There was one shop in particular that made me it kind of made me I was that like faith in humanity restored. So faith in
Yeah.
witchcraft restored. It was called the Coven's Cottage. Yes, the Coven's Cottage. And me and Joyce were passing it, like we'd go get coffee and they weren't open yet, and because they opened a little later than the other ones, like around 11. And I'm like, man, when are they gonna open? Like, this is a really neat looking little shop. It wasn't very flashy like the other ones. It was very small and just they had this little bench outside. Um, and what I noticed was that outside the door they had a sign, and it said, "No cell phones." But not just in the fact of like don't take calls in our store, but like no texting, no Google, no nothing. Like do not take your phone out of your pocket in our store, period. And I was like, why? What is in this shop that is so different from all these other shops that they felt, that they had to post that outside the door? And so finally the shop opened and we went in and I completely understood why. Because it was literally a witch's cottage inside this shop. And it wasn't commercial witch cottage. Like there were herbs hanging from the ceiling, drying, like dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. They had a house blessing powder that was made by them. They had animal bones that they had there that they got from sanctuaries. Um, they had beautiful cauldrons, just really authentic witchcraft materials. And I was completely in love the moment I set foot in the store. I was like, this is why I came to Salem, to find a shop like this. This is what I wanted, because I can't. There's no shops like that in my immediate area where I am, and sometimes buying that stuff online, it just feels weird. And plus, there's something really nice about going into a shop and browsing and being
And
like, oh,
talking to
hey,
somebody.
yeah, and just being like, oh, I want to pick this up, or oh my God, they have this here? Like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that I could even find that. Like I got a thing of Irish peat moss, I think it is.
Cool.
Yeah, I got a coyote claw, a badger claw,
Oh,
a goat horn. Um,
oh,
what else
Katie
did we
told me you
get?
got that for her.
Yeah, I also got her a goat horn too,
Hmm.
and a couple other things I can't remember. I'm gonna have to. I want to lay all the things
Chicken
out that
feet.
I got. No, no chicken feet.
Good.
They're a little expensive. They're a
I
little
was
expensive.
I was gonna say you don't need them. You don't want to be doing chicken feet smells.
Yeah, and that I didn't really have any use for it.
Hmm.
But yeah, it felt so good to go into that shop and say, yes, this is, and that was the kind of, and it made me be like, yes, this is the kind of shop that I want. This is what I want to bring to my local area. I don't want the same candles that you can buy in the grocery store. I don't want the same, six Athame styles that you can buy at any other vendor. I don't want that shit because to
Hmm.
me it's just shit. It's okay when you're first starting out, I guess, and you don't know any
I
better.
feel like everybody looks back on that stuff as my first witchcraft supplies, which is like not to
Yeah,
shame it, but that's kind of what it is. Like, those carved pentagram boxes, or like the selenite wand, or the one of six tarot decks, which I mean, uh, the tarot decks is a whole different thing, but I know what you mean. There's a lot of like starter equipment that people will often get. Like, I mean, I get it. My first fucking pentagram was from Spencer's, which is like
so is mine. So
a
is mine.
yeah.
I can, and and there's no shame in that, is what I'm saying. But I want to be a witch shop for witches, not a witch shop
Yeah.
for, um, you know,
So while
everyday
we're on
people.
that point, can I plug some shops in Canada to talk about them a little bit?
Yeah,
So like there was a shop in Vancouver that went under like the year that
not
I last.
sponsored, by the way. None of
No,
these.
we're totally not. I mean, this shop's already closed. It was called Salamagundi West, and it was
Mm,
weird because like the lady had legit witch wares because she knew witches. She knew what all the wares were, but she didn't
mm,
practice. She didn't know really a lot of the stuff. Like she was asking me why she couldn't win the lottery with a spell, and I'm like, well, you're contesting everybody else's will because everybody who's buying that is also vying for it, and you basically are trying to like have your space take up a bigger piece of the pie, and it's an incredibly difficult thing. That's why almost nobody wins the lottery through magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, really? And she like hadn't really crossed over the concept, and she was a very nice lady. Like, I don't want to talk ill of her, she was sweet, but her
Mm-hmm.
shop was very authentic. Like, they had, like, I got like 13 coyote teeth from there, or coyote teeth, however you like to say it, and I mailed them to different members of DKMU actually. um, and I had one too, but I had a bag that I used to carry around with a small rope doll idol of Zalti, and the bag was like treasures I had tied to his sword, and one was like a Dianic brooch, which was like a moon with a palm in the middle. It had a eye in it, and there was like an arrow crossing through it that stabbed through the eye and like went through the moon, and it was
Mm.
like fucking wonderful. And I bought it at Salamagundi West actually. Same thing with like the embroidered bag that Zalti was holding on all the stuff with, right? And in their basement it was like you walk into that place and it was the most haunted fucking building you've been in Vancouver. I'm serious. Like, you look around and you're like, holy shit, right? And she had like different witch artists working out of the basement, like, and doing commission spaces in there with like really cool art and stuff, and they were like making like art sculptures out of bones in like framed boxes that you'd hang on your walls that were like spells and shit. It was wonderful. And like, they had about 100 drawers downstairs. There was like, the whole thing was downstairs was like kind of a treasure trove where you went to go look for stuff, and there were these drawers with different stuff in it that you could find, like little toys from like various different eras and like very old antique stuff, right? Like, I found an
Mm.
old bunny rabbit that you could wind up and it would hop, and I gave it to a friend of mine, and like,
Mm.
it was a delightful store. I'm very sad that it went under. Then in Toronto, you have the Occult Shop, which is a really good place because it's not really your typical occult shop. Like, yeah, they got tarot decks, and they have a lot of fucking tarot decks, and yeah, they got um crystals, but they got like god statues and goddess statues. They have like silver pendants that are like Solomonic and made by local artists. Like,
Mm.
my silver pentagram that I got was custom made by a local artist, and all of the stuff that they sell there is like that. And they have like different people who make different products that are in their shop. Like, there's this one girl, I think at least they're a girl who makes a bunch of soap that they sell in the shop. And like, sometimes you'll get products like bath salt spells, and like, it's literal real spells that people who have been doing in the family for generations. And I've talked to the people there, and they're very kind, and they'll talk to you about what they're doing, but they won't necessarily tell you what's in their herbs because they know it's a business and they have to stay open, right? But they have like really good book selections. They have like sprays and mini cauldrons and bigger cauldrons, and like, you can get all kinds of delicious stuff. Like, I got coffin nails that I sent y'all were from the occult shop,
Mm-hmm.
and I get like frankincense, myrrh, like the incenses there are like handmade by people in the local community. Like, they have tarot readings there. Like, it's it's a really powerful place. Oh, and like, they service people from all different pantheons. So you'll have different types of practitioners coming in there all the time and buying different stuff, and you get like really interesting conversations. And I kind of walk in, and I guess sometimes I intimidate other people in there because they like look at me and they're like, okay. I look very serious. Like, if you meet me in person, you'll know what I mean.
I get the same too. Like I guess I always got that, like when I was presenting female, I always got that you should smile more, you know. You look so serious.
Yeah. For me,
Yeah.
it's
I
like,
still come across really strong. I guess I still have I don't know what they call resting bitch face.
oh
I'm
yeah.
just not very expressive with my face. It's just something I'm just not. Doesn't mean I'm having a bad time. It's just I'm in my head a lot
Mm.
is really what it is.
See, with me, it's like I'm actually really nice and I'm not necessarily intimidating or standoffish if I know you or anything like that. But
Right.
like, as a trans woman who's had some shit happen to her, when I'm in public, I'm ready for shit. You know what I mean? Like I'm literally
Yeah.
ready for anybody to jump me at any fucking moment because that's how PTSD works. And like I had some shit happen actually like 3 weeks ago, not even like 2 weeks ago, at a fire at my friend's birthday where some guy who was a bad person was not supposed to be there kept coming back and like I was ready to fight each time. Like I
Hmm.
can't really turn it off, right? So I do kind of intimidate people because of that, right? But I'm like very chill and warm if I'm like in a nice environment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good to talk about good witch shops because it really brings back the point of I don't mind spending money in those stores. I don't mind giving them my money because I am purchasing legitimate things, which I think for me is really my opinion on exchanging witchcraft, or I guess product and service for money, is that I want them to be authentic and I want them to be quality.
Hmm.
I don't always feel comfortable when I get maybe some people just think that they can, oh, I can just go to these same wholesale vendors and buy some incense and buy
God,
some
like the Sephora
daggers.
witchcraft kit.
Maybe not even as simple as that, but you know what I mean. You see it all the time. You see the
Hmm.
prepackaged incense. You see the prepackaged this and the crystals, and um, it's just, or the books with the pentagram on the cover, and like you said, like the wooden boxes with the pentagram on the cover. And I want, I'm at a point now where I'm like, I want supplies. I don't
Hmm.
want decorations, and I don't need a book that has I don't need a leather bound book that has a pentagram on it, because honestly, if I write a spell on a napkin, then as far as I'm
Hmm.
concerned, that becomes a part of my grimoire. So it is what it is to me.
Hmm.
um some people really go for the show, for the look, but I mean that's just personal preference. But that's where I don't mind spending my money on which is where I feel like it's okay to charge. If you know in your heart that you have a quality, legitimate product and or service that you are offering, then there is nothing wrong with putting a dollar sign on it and charging money for it, because you put your work and time and effort into it. Now, whether this is in the case of having your own store, or maybe you just have a little shop that you go to different pagan pride events or different craft fairs, however it is that you sell your product or your service, as long as it is authentic and true and just legitimate, then more power to you. But I don't appreciate, I guess, the commercial part of it. It's like right now is a very good time to be a it's a very good time to work toward being a self-sustaining witch, and it's also a very bad time to work toward being a self-sustaining witch, because there's a lot of this commercial element that's out there.
Hmm.
People expect certain things from you, but then it's also the witchcraft community expects certain things from you, and you have to think, like, are you trying to serve are you trying to serve the both communities from the vocation of the witch, or are you just trying to make money because you're a witch?
Yeah. And it's definitely a thing too to make sure that you're finding somebody. If you're somebody who isn't a witch yourself, because I feel like most people who watch this podcast are witches, but in case there are people who aren't, like, do your research, like, talk to people about that person, like, and if some of the stuff we've mentioned that are kind of like red flags come up, like the whole emotional display, maybe don't give them your money again because they're that they're like trying to prey on you, right?
Right.
And a lot of people who want to provide you those services really want to give you good advice rather than like tell you your future, you know?
Right. And another thing I noticed with some of the shops in Salem that were really advertising the readings that they offered in their shops, they had those reading tables by the front window, like where people were passing by.
Oh yeah.
Instead of it being, because honestly, I would not feel comfortable doing a reading for someone as part of the display. You're basically a mannequin in the window.
Mhm. You're advertising for them. It's very
It's crafty, that's for sure.
it's fucking kind of gross.
Yeah, it's crafty. And yeah, it really rubbed me the wrong way. And Joyce even said it too. They were like, "Why are they in the front window like that? Like that's just not right." And I'm like, I completely agree with you. Like any shops that I've been in that were very good, in my opinion. If they did have reading areas, they were always in the back,
Always in the
maybe a bit more
back.
secluded, more quiet, private kind of thing, because that's like legit shit that you're it's a very private, intimate moment with whoever you're reading, and I just don't think it's right to put them out on display like a
Yeah,
puppet.
it's that's pretty fucked up in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and it makes I also think about this really difficult I have a hard moral issue with so Philly, despite being as big as it is and as weird as it is, we have like one legitimate occult shop. That's it. And
Mhm.
it's not that big and it doesn't carry a ton of stuff. And it's in a really it's in like a business district it's on South Street, and South Street isn't what it used to be. It's kind of like dwindling down. It doesn't attract as many people as it once did as a shopping district. So, and the other issue is that I have learned that the guy who owns the shop is not actually a practitioner of the occult, witchcraft, anything.
Mm.
Yeah. He acquired the property and with it the shop, because I think there's an apartment above it. So he acquired the property and with that he acquired the business. And the person who works there full time is someone I know, and I go to this shop to attend Sabbath celebrations and stuff. The person that is the full time person, just like working in the shop, the main like full time staff person, is an actual practicing witch, actually knows what the hell they're talking about, tries their hardest to keep the shop stocked with good stuff, um, but is constantly like railroaded by the guy who actually owns the store.
Mhm.
And I'm in this difficult position where I'm like, man, I kind of don't want to support this shop because it's not owned by a legitimate practitioner of the craft. It's kind of
Mhm.
in that way. But then at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but it's the livelihood of a friend
A
of mine.
legit practitioner. Yeah.
Right. So I always find myself in this tricky situation, and I would love to like get a band of local witches together and buy the guy out of the shop, just like we'll take the business. You keep the, or like we'll rent from you, or like whatever the case
Yeah.
is. Like we'll
Take
just
it
rent the
over
shop from you.
and then eventually just buy them out and be like, "Look, just get the fuck out of here. Here's your
Yeah,
payout.
exactly.
Go."
Exactly.
That'd be
Like I would
cool.
love to get a collective, but I've kind of been thinking more along the lines of maybe like a competing shop maybe could possibly
Maybe.
pop up, because competition's always good. But
One
I
thing I wanted to say, it's weird to me, city witchcraft, because I have only lived in the city for 5 years of my life.
That's
Um,
true, yeah.
I'm a fucking rural girl. Like I know I've mentioned it a few times, but my hometown, Jay, has 3,000 people in it. The whole area. is 3,000 people.
That's less than my high school.
Yeah, I think it's 4,000 now, but when I grew up, it was 3,000.
I can't imagine
You
that.
it's so small town and nestled in the middle of the fucking Badland Mountain area of BC. It's like where the only desert in Canada meets a pine forest. So
Mm,
like on the north halves of the mountains there, it's pine forest because they get less sun and heat. And on the south facing parts, it's like arid desert. There's like sagebrush and like some small cacti can grow in the summer on those mountains, specifically prickly pear. And like there's rattlesnakes. There's literally a mountain named after where the rattlesnakes live, and it's they're diamondback rattlers, and like there's black widows that'll fucking kill you, and brown recluse and stuff. And it's a wild little fucking town. And if I wanted animal bones, I'd go out and look where animals get killed, you know? And I've
hmm
gathered my fair share of like stuff from the woods. Like I've taken plenty of bones that I've found, right? It's easy enough to get. And sometimes your family hunts, so you get horns or something, and it's much easier to come by stuff like that. And if I want herbs, I'll go out and look for herbs with an identification book, right? And if I can't get them, I'll plant them myself and grow them. So it's like interesting because it teaches you like a very connected with the land exchange for getting
hmm
those items without having to have it all capitalized. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like it is true that, we have to live in the world that we're born in, but there's something very nice to be said too about being able to go into the woods and get it yourself without dying, and don't go alone and unarmed. The two rules of the woods: both people bring weapons, whether it's a big fucking knife or like a big fucking hammer or something. You
hmm
you both have that, and you don't go alone. This has saved my life in numerous instances.
hmm Yeah, I mean, from someone who has grown up only in an urban, um, I've only been in a city my entire life, so for me to come across animal bones, either out, it's very, very rare that I find them, just somewhere in my travels in a city. That's why that Coven's Cottage store blew my mind, because I was like, I can't find this stuff where I am. And I would love more than anything to go out into the woods and find things and forage and stuff like that. But the thing is I don't have the knowledge. Like, yeah, I could go out into the woods, but I don't know what I'm looking at. I really don't. I have no clue. Um,
You know what lavender looks like though, like the buds, right? Like
yeah,
you could spot the plant, I'm sure. Like there's a lot of knowledge that you'd be surprised would translate over. Like you can spot rosemary once you've seen it enough times. Like how I learned a lot of my herbs was by like buying them and working with them, and then I see them in the woods and I'm like, "Oh, that's yarrow flower." And I can just spot it at a point, right? So like it doesn't hurt to buy stuff from an apothecary to learn it in a safe way too, and then be able to learn to like get your own. And like this is going to sound very old school, but local libraries in a lot of rural areas almost always have books on local flora and fauna, so you can go
hmm
out and like have identification guides that you can get from the library. And if you want to get animal bones, well, like, fuck, man, come up to Canada sometime and bring a car.
yeah.
We'll take a trip. I'll take you out into some woods. We'll go on a hike, maybe camp, and I'll show you fucking Canadian wilderness.
That sounds like a great time to me.
I could
But
do that by Ravensdale because there's a lot of people out there who are witches too.
hmm yeah, I heard you mention that
Hmm.
area before. But I think that I think shops play a very important part, especially for urban witches, because it's not easy for us to access things like animal bones and certain herbs and stuff like that. So to have these shops there is actually really important
Hmm.
for urban witches, and it really helps us do our work. And when you have a good legitimate shop that offers those materials, it just makes it so much better, and you feel so much better about going there and giving them your money,
Brilliant.
you know? It
And
just feels
also,
good.
and they provide stuff that you can't get yourself. Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
just make books yourself. You have to order that online if you're in a small
Mm-hmm.
town. And like I couldn't get frankincense and myrrh any fucking other place than a witchcraft shop. And I can go there and buy sulfur if I need it. You know, like certain
Yep.
shit that you literally just can't get anywhere else. You will find in a witchcraft shop because it is their trade, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like
Exactly.
they're priceless, and I'm like I was prattling on about how great the wood side of it is too, but really I'm a best of both worlds kind of girl. And I think that like yeah, go out in the woods and get your own herbs, but like support your local fucking witchcraft shop, because if they're legit and the more you put into them, the more they can give back. Like I've had long conversations with people in different witchcraft shops about their wares and given them suggestions on like books and stuff and things that people would engage with, and they actually really appreciate the advice a lot of the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um especially like if a shop's run by an older practitioner and they don't necessarily know what books are connecting to the youth these days, it's nice to give them a few author names and say, hey, check these out online. I really liked this, and help each other out, you know. And I think we can do a lot to help support each other, whether or not you're spending your money on witchcraft or whether you're making your money from witchcraft, because we all live in a stupid fucking system called capitalism. So we might as well work together. And like, my dream is to have like witchcraft collectives and like areas where you could just literally go to meet people. Like, I still don't know how to get into a fucking coven, and I'm 30 and I've been practicing for a decade. Like, well, over a decade, but like, you know, so like
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be a really good way to start bringing people together. And I feel like making spaces like that and holding events and having performers and artists come together, I think it really starts with us taking lessons from the queer community, you know? Like, look at what we do for like poetry slams. Could you imagine
Mm-hmm.
if we did stuff like that for the witchcraft community? If we workshopped spells on a weekly basis at places, like it would, the amount of knowledge we could get if we let down our walls and reservations about sharing our traditions with each other, you know? Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
so fucking private, but god damn it, we'd thrive as a community.
Yeah, that's you actually kind of just pretty much summed up this entire episode. You really just summed up the whole
I
point
have
of
it
it, which is
I have it of
which
doing that every so often.
which is great because we are really coming up on, kind of like an hour anyway.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I completely agree with all the points that you made, and I think unfortunately it's kind of like you said earlier in the episode, money fucking sucks.
It does.
Um, I'm not saying that everyone needs to be a witch, you have to hate money and hate the system, and I'm not saying that, but
It helps. In
money,
my opinion, it helps.
yeah, depending on your train of thought, but yeah, it helps. I mean, trust me, I wish more than anything that, like me, suppose you're my neighbor, and I'm like, hey, Sophia, could I trade you 2 eggs for some butter? So you know what I mean? I would
I'd just be
prefer
like,
something
dude,
like
take the
that.
butter. I
Right.
don't.
Call me bastard. Uh, but yeah, you know what I mean. I wish that that we could survive on like a barter and trade system. Like, hey, I need this and you need this, so let's just swap things or whatever the case is. But unfortunately, our society is ruled by this little thing called money, and I don't think that I don't really think a witch should measure their worth in the amount of revenue that they can pull in from whatever it is that they're doing. Um, but it is important to take pride in whatever it is that you're doing that is making you money, and it is okay to to make money from your craft, but just as long as you're producing good quality shit, honestly. Like, let's just like lay it down in its most basic form. Like, don't rip people off. Don't be a jerk. Don't scam people. You know what I mean? Like, if someone asks you for a particular service and you can't do it, or it's just not in your wheelhouse, don't just do it for the dollar signs. It's not worth all of those other implications. It's not like you sell like you sell someone a broken item, and okay, it's broken, they return it, okay, no big deal, whatever. But you can't sell someone a broken spell. Like, the implications of that are just, it's too much. It's too much, and it's not worth the whatever money it is that you may have gotten in exchange for it.
Yeah.
But all in all, definitely support your local witch shops. Those are people that are really trying to bring something into their communities. Maybe offer, I don't know, to like volunteer for a couple hours a week or something if they could look like they could use the help, or whatever the case is. Just give back to the community. Don't be afraid to charge money for things in the craft that you're good at and that you can provide a service for. And just other than that, just stay true to yourself, stay true to your craft, and don't be afraid to make it your livelihood.
And if I could chip in a few things, smash the patriarchy, dismantle white supremacy, form anarchistic communes, love each other radically, and forgive as many people as you can find it within yourself to do. And empathy is more rebellious than a middle finger. Thank you.
Yes, it's mic drop. I mean, yeah, all jokes aside, I completely agree. I think the older I get, the more fucking radical I get. I can't tell you how many times I'm at work and I'm like, I'm just gonna go get a plot of land in the woods and create a
Let's
commune.
go do communism.
Yeah. Be gay, do communism.
Let's role play. We'll do communism in kink.
My kink.
On next episode.
Next episode, communism is my kink.
God, in a world, and then you just talk about actually being able to have affordable housing and eating and like a regular basis and being able to go to school and like being able to go to the hospital.
Yeah,
and
tell me your wildest
that's just the whole episode. That's just the whole episode.
The world is fucked, everyone. Sorry.
It'll get better, I hope. I'm working on it. Join me in magic, everyone. Love the world and use magic to make it a better place. I know you have it within you.
What's that? Was that be gay, do crimes? Be gay, do witchcraft.
Be gay, do crime, use magic to save the world.
Done.
Yeah, that should be our fucking motto.
I was gonna say that should be our first line of Witches Betwixt merch. Anywho, we're gonna wrap this up here. I hope you guys enjoyed the topic that we're talking about. Please chime in, let us know how you feel. Are we wrong? Are we not wrong? I don't know. Let us know your opinions on it. You can follow
colonialism. Us on... Sorry, I don't know how I didn't forget that. And colonialism.
Yes, and colonialism. This episode's been all over the place, but that's okay. It's pretty par for the course for us. But I think that's why people like us, is because we're not super organized. Anyway, yes, you can follow us on all the social medias. We're putting the website together. That's my little spiel here at the end. And I think we'll see you all in the next episode.
Have a good one, loves.
See you later.